Hello, guys, and welcome to Comic Uno. And today we are doing a broadcast about our current anthology, Aces and Arrows. This is live on Kickstarter right now for another 14 days. We're going to get a few of the creators on here to talk about their books and to kind of jump into everything. So our first guest is going to be at 7:05. We already have them in the background, but for now, Jeremy, why don't you introduce what is this anthology, how you got involved, who you are, and I will also say that Phil, who is also the co-creator of this book, and my business partner for Lifeline Comics, he might be on, he might not be on. He apologizes if he isn't. Just he had an event he had to go to. So.
Life's complicated.
Exactly, life is complicated, and I was like, "Don't worry, I can hold the fort." So, but yeah, Jeremy, how have you been involved in this? Who are you? How are you connected?
So my name is Jeremy Whitley. I am a comics writer. I've been doing comics for around 15 years at this point, professionally. Probably best known for my original stuff like Princeless and The Dog Knight and Navigating with You, but also for writing quite a bit of My Little Pony and writing for Marvel on things like Unstoppable Wasp, which was very, very well received book over there. I sort of got involved with this indirectly. I've known Kat for a long time, since before you were making comics, back when you were just reviewing comics. And you guys had started doing these anthologies a while back. And specifically, like over the course of the last couple years, I've come out as demisexual, which is sort of under the Ace umbrella. And a sort of cool opportunity came to me with Marvel, which was writing a story for their online romance series, where Gwenpool, who a lot of people know, especially if they read a lot of comics or play a lot of Fortnite for that matter, we were doing a story where she was coming out as Ace, sort of, coming to better understand her identity. And my editor wanted to put together a group of people who were all sort of like Ace spec, all people that were under that general Ace umbrella, and asked me about doing that. And I was psyched. And it was a really cool and unique opportunity to work with a whole team of Ace people on a book like that. It was not something that happens very often, and certainly something that you have to work to make happen. And I think as a combination of that and some of the other books that you guys were doing, it came to pass that you guys wanted to do a Ace and Arrow anthology, where we we did stories about asexual and aromantic people. And because I had some experience, particularly in that area, you guys hit me up and said, "Hey, do you want to, co-edit this?" And we'll bring you in to talk about some of the stuff that is more specific to you, that you know more about. And I was, of course, really, really excited for that. And it's been a really cool opportunity to get to share sort of that unique moment that I had with Gwenpool, with a whole lot of other creators who are, on the Ace spectrum, who, otherwise might have never had the opportunity to tell Ace stories in comics, and particularly to work with a team full of other, Ace and Arrow people.
Yeah, and it's just been such an awesome collaboration. We'll talk more about our stories and more of the collaboration as the show goes on. And it looks like Phil might try joining, so he might be on too. But in the meantime, let's introduce our first creators here. So we have Logan and Ornella, who did the story Herculean Struggle. So I'm going to join them. Ornella's not going to have a camera on, so you're just going to hear their voice, and Logan will have their camera on. So how's it going, guys? What's up?
It's going good for me. I don't know. Excited, a little nervous to be here, but, can do my best.
Yeah, no worries. I'll say that there's nothing to be nervous about. We don't bite. And it's just a fun time to talk about the stories. Ornella, are you there as well?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for having me. Sorry if my English is not the best. I'm not a native English speaker, so I'll try my best.
No worries. Well, first, before we jump into questions, what is your story about? That way people can hear a little bit about the short.
Yeah, so my story is it's about a like 1930s, 40s-ish circus strongman kind of sort of just struggling, no pun intended, to come to terms with his asexuality and kind of discussing it with a little bit with his wife, girlfriend. It's not really made clear, but yeah, and obviously in the first page we have the panel of like the sort of a symbolism where he kind of turns into like a marble statue as he's like holding the weight above him, and he just collapses, and that, you know, it's kind of the centerpiece of the whole thing. And then yeah, just that kind of
And what was your collaboration like? I'm actually going to show the picture here. You know, did you guys know each other before? If you didn't, what was the collaboration to kind of get the story all together?
Oh yeah, we've been working for the past 3 years actually. It's just on a web comic, Witch's Thrall, which I have mentioned in the my bio on the Kickstarter. But yeah, that's yeah. So we've been. Oh, sorry.
And Ornella, what was it like to kind of get onto this project for both of you guys to do something different? And I'll pass to Jeremy to see if he has any questions.
So personally, I prefer to work. I prefer working on someone else's story. I'm always. I always work better if I have someone else's story, because I'm really self-conscious about my writing. So when Logan proposed me this project, I was really happy about it. Personally, it hit a little close to home for me as well, since I'm an asexual myself. So it was kind of nice, you know. We don't see this kind of stuff here in Italy often. So it was a breath of fresh air, really.
Yeah, I think this was one that really appealed to me when we were going through sort of the process of selecting stories as a story that explores. I mean, we talk a lot now in storytelling about toxic masculinity, but not necessarily in the ways that it affects men. And I think, you know, as much as there are a lot of horrible results of toxic masculinity towards women, I think this is certainly, like, men are often the first victims of toxic masculinity. They often like are having themselves who they are questioned and pushed and changed, and are constantly like having to redefine themselves against these sort of like ideals of what men are supposed to be. And, you know, even in this case, I think it stood out to me because this is a guy who's clearly strong. He's clearly masculine in the traditional sense, but even, you know, even in this case, he's meant to feel sort of less than because of his own, you know, asexuality, because he's not necessarily feeling the same things that he's told he's supposed to.
And we also have a question on, as I try to figure out how to make this go live on Facebook. It's live on YouTube and Twitter right now. But this is a question from Echoed P. Oh, and it also looks like Phil's on there too, and we could get him to ask a question. The Echoed P says, was it hard to work in the page limit? I know each story is like only 5 pages or so. So for a background information, the pages are around 2, 4, 6, or 8. I don't remember if any actually got to 8, and I don't think we have any there too, so mostly 4 or 6 pages. But yeah, what was it like to work in that page limit?
Well, my story was actually the script I submitted was 6 pages, but I was asked to trim it down. So I don't know. I mean, it was mostly just a process of trying to work out what was truly like essential to the narrative that I wanted to tell. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think as a comic book writer, like, you wouldn't, people who don't write all the time wouldn't necessarily think it, but short stories can be the hardest things to write. You know, trying to get sort of that economy of storytelling in there, and trying to like get across what you need to get across to tell a story in, you know, 2, 4, 6, or even 8 pages is not easy. And and even mine, I was sort of like pushing the limit with that. But yeah, you guys are. It's a very economically told story, and it's very. There's a lot of like just getting any extra fat off of there and getting down to exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, and that's something in our editing process we do a lot, is that we'll get a lot of 8-page stories that we do tend to bring to 6, because then it gives the opportunity for more stories to be on in this book. And I will say we rarely have 8-page stories, or like we keep this at 8. I think it's been like 2 or 3. But yeah, Phil, you've entered the chat. Introduce yourself. If you have any questions, or even piggybacking off of that topic we were just talking about, go ahead.
Sure. Sorry, I'm in a little late, and then I'm in an Uber, everyone.
In New York City.
In New York. If it gets too distracting, I will drop off until I'm actually home. But no, very great to meet you finally on camera. Logan, really loved your story. It really stood out to us. If I'm repeating stuff that's already been said, you cut me off, Kat. But it really stood out to us during the curation process, because we really wanted the perspective of, like the quote unquote literally a strongman in your story, like a circus like strongman, but also like a man who is held to particular standards, and their experience of asexuality. And we really enjoyed the relationship at the core of your story, and I think that it's very unique in the anthology for that place that it holds, in that depiction of your central character and his relationship that he forms as a result of it. So, really enjoyed working with you and Ornella, who I believe you applied with. So I'm not sure if you've worked with them in the past, but their art was fantastic and really like brought your story to life. Really, really enjoy this one.
That is something they mentioned, that they worked on a webtoon together. And that's always fun too, is to have creators who have worked together, see what magic they could do on a story, like something new. I mean, something that they haven't worked on. And then also putting people together and becoming friends. That's kind of one of our favorite parts of doing this. But yeah, we have about 3 more minutes on this one. So Ornella or Logan, is there anything else you guys would like to share about your story, about your experiences? And then we'll get on to the next group of people here.
Well, as you said, it's really nice to work with people, new people, meet new friends, and definitely it has been extremely fun for me to see the others projects that you will probably talk about soon. It was everyone did an amazing job. I enjoyed the art so much. I can't wait to read all of them, really, and I hope that whoever reads our story enjoys it, because personally I enjoyed a lot the script, and I really hope people will do the same.
And isn't that what's so cool? That's like a cool part on our side, is that we kind of keep everyone a secret before that then the page comes up and everyone's like, oh, that's what the other stories are in the book. And it's always fun to see everyone's reactions, because again, everyone's kind of working in that bubble, and we're working within that bubble with everyone else until you get to see the page and you get to see the book, and everyone gets to interact with each other through social media and stuff like that. It's kind of fun to like see your guys' reaction. They're like, oh, that's the other story, that's really cool. And it's like,
yeah. I didn't know who the others were. I started following them online because they have an amazing way. I love their art. I love their work in general. Their works in general. So it was a really nice surprise.
It's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We are gonna bring in the next person. So
you guys want to do your outro and let people know where they can find you.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm a skeletal scribe on Blue Sky, and it's trying to post more frequently, but
And I'm my name is Ornithoplatypus, technically, online. That's a reference to my real name, which is Ornella. You can find me on Blue Sky, Tumblr, and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We are gonna bring in the next. Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
No worries. All right, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna take off Logan, and then we're gonna bring in the next person, which is Cece, and we're gonna have Cece introduce themselves and let us know about their story.
Hi, am I live? Am I live?
Right. You're officially
You're
live.
Hi, I'm Cece. I am 1/4 of Addictor Media. I am the writer and creator of Mythfall, a fantasy epic in space, and I'm really excited to talk about my short for the Aces and Arrows anthology, which is called Ace Brandon, an Asexual Super Spy.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, why don't you ask the first question? I'm going to be 1 second, and then yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Cece, this was, I think, one of the first ones that I read when we were going through that I was super excited about. This was one that I think the three of us, we went through and read every story, and we sort of graded them independently of which ones were our favorite. And yours definitely came up towards the top for all three of us, just because it's such a fun concept of. I mean, you can talk a little bit more about it, but it sort of plays with the very allosexual concepts of James Bond and spycraft and how sexiness is or isn't interwoven into that.
Yeah. This was a lot of fun. So, the thing that I think I wanted to do is I did want to have a story that was really fun. I didn't want to have a story that was about like the trauma of being erased or whatever. I wanted to be like, I really like the way I am, and I want everyone to see how like fun and cool it is. And when discussing, tossing around ideas with my husband, I stumbled upon the concept of like the 007 type of Casanova ladies man idea, and I had a lot of familiarity with that. I've seen a lot of James Bond films, and there's an element of the sexuality in James Bond films that feels ridiculous to me. It feels very like over the top and silly, and so I thought it would be a really fun idea if we if I took a character like that and made him completely asexual. And that idea allowed me to get at a concept I really wanted to get at, which is the idea of not being able to see attraction, really. The idea that like you're going through the world and people are having these experiences where they see attractiveness in a particular way and you're just not really involved in that. And so having a gadgeteer who can make the hot vision goggles that'll finally allow him to see who's hot like everyone else does.
I loved sort of having a Q who was there to I guess provide the things that James Bond never needs, because James Bond never has trouble figuring out who's hot or how any of that stuff works. He's much worse with the actual spycraft side of things. So like that was fun to me, and I also think it's fun you were talking about wanting to do something that was fun and enjoying who you are, and I think that was something that I like that a lot of these stories capture. There is obviously aspects of being erased and feeling left out that we do also talk about, but like the majority of the ace people I know are not unfun over serious people. Like they're not always sad about stuff. They do have a good time and they enjoy things. And I think also a lot of the people I know in comics who are ace are some of the ones who write the like stories with the most sexy people and sex stuff in them. Ironically, even if they don't necessarily like, that's not necessarily part of their daily life. They love a good like, disaster gay or something like that.
Yeah, I know that I have aces in my life that are like way into fan fiction.
Yeah,
it's not the same as like a real kind of in-person stuff.
Yeah, I made the comparison to somebody of like a lot of ace folks love writing about sexy stuff and don't really want to participate in it in the same way that a lot of us love writing about war or people beating each other up, but we don't necessarily want to go fight people.
Yeah, I'm into genre a lot, and it's like there's a lot of stories that I love, settings I love reading about, but I wouldn't want to visit personally.
Yeah, I love stories set in space. I have no urge to go to space.
Yeah.
No one wants to be Katy Perry here. We don't even want to touch that spectrum of space.
I am not like a firework.
No, definitely not. Neither of us are. But you know what was fun we were talking about earlier with the other creative team is that they knew each other. So what was it like for you to work with Malmora, who actually for Lifeline Comics, we have worked with a lot. We've worked with him on Haunting. We worked with him on Devin Taylor. So it's kind of fun to see him do this really fun and whimsical spy story as well.
Yeah, it was really great working with Mauricio. He's fantastic. He's like totally everything he turned in was amazing. It was I was kind of excited to be matched with somebody new. Not somebody new, but just like somebody I didn't know. Like I didn't go in with a team and I was like, we're rolling the dice. And I had left an important element of the story fully up to the artist, which was I had indicated that I wanted the viewer to be in the same position as Ace was, where they wouldn't be able to tell who was hot without the hot vision goggles, to put the reader like in that same space. But I left it totally open how he wanted to do that. And I was like, maybe their faces are in shadow, or I was like, maybe you make them all look like Where's Waldo. I checked with my husband 4 or 5 times. So like, Where's Waldo's not like secretly hot, right? There's, and he was like, no, he's not hot. I was like, okay.
I mean, like those stripes are kind of hot, but okay.
I was like, I don't think Where's Waldo's hot, but I don't know. I'm sure he's got fans.
He's a little matchy, you know.
Yeah, he doesn't give me vibes for that, but I'm not a source. So what Mauricio ultimately intended to do was he gave them like dot eyes, like a sort of more cartoony style, so that it wasn't really clear. Like they had a sort of sameness that they all have dot eyes, they all have like simple mouths and stuff, and their character expression is done just through their clothes. And I thought it was really cool how he did that, and he also brought the hot vision goggles to life. Because I was like, I'm thinking like Ray-Bans, but you know, like do what you want. And it was kind of cool to leave that totally open, basically, because not coming in with an artist, it was just going to be luck of the draw, and I wasn't sure if that was going to be like difficult or annoying. But it sounds like he really had.
CC somehow. Let me see. I don't know how that happened. Well, CC had about 3 minutes left, so if they come back, we'll definitely want to hear the finished thought. But actually, who was next was Jeremy. So we have Jeremy here, and we can talk about your story and your introduction story. So I also see timing wise. Okay. I think actually Day's next. I'm sorry, Day is next. So then we're gonna go Jeremy. So let's bring in.
CC pinged in the private chat that they're back. So.
Oh yeah, they're back. So we could finish CC, and then Day, you will be up. So CC, if you want to finish your thought, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I actually the vagaries of the internet. But yeah, it was kind of cool leaving those elements totally open in a kind of wild card aspect where I didn't know how they were going to turn it out. I was leaving it totally up to an artist that I didn't know in advance, and he really knocked it out of the park. So it was really fantastic working with him.
I gotta say, I'm trying to think if we see any of it in the preview, but I really love the Hot Spy's dress, which is just covered in pockets, which like there are a lot of girls I know that would immediately be like, oh, that's so hot, just pockets all over this dress.
It is in the preview, thankfully, so anyone can see those.
Yes, there it is. We love the pockets. I think there's a watch hanging out too, so they're utilizing those pockets too.
Functional pockets. Yes, she only needed one pocket for the watch, and the only guidance I was like, the dress has pockets, but I didn't say how many, and he really kind of ran with it. It was great.
I love that. That's so fun. I forget, Phil, did you ask a question? Well, Phil's actually in a tunnel, so literally. So Cece, is there anything you want to plug, anything you want to say about the story that you haven't shared?
I think we really covered like the elements of the story. The hot vision goggles themselves were like a really fun idea that I liked playing with. And I was excited about the script. I think I saw in the comments there was some talk about cutting the script down. I did submit it at 8, and you had me cut it down to 6, which I think was a great exercise. I wasn't sure. I made it sort of longer than I thought it probably needed to be on purpose, because I wasn't sure on my own what elements to cut, and so you guys gave me a little guidance of like where to cut, and I thought that was a really helpful process working through that with you all.
That's awesome. We love hearing that. I've heard that a few times, the editing process, and that's something we always want to do with this book and with anything, is that, especially for anybody, just give editing notes. I mean, you could learn for the future of your comic career, and also try to keep your story as well at the same time. But yeah, Cece, is there anything else, any social media stuff you want to share before you jump off?
Yes, you can find me on Substack primarily, and then Instagram and Blue Sky at Caffeine Comics. And I am part of Addictor Media, and you can find Addictor Media at Addictor Media on Instagram. And we have 2 active crowdfunding campaigns right now, including one comics campaign for our superhero slice of life incident report.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed being part of this.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, let me let's see. I never know how to drop. We'll figure it out. But let me see if I could drop you off. If not, CC, I think you might have to drop off on your own. Let's see. You might get kicked off. Let's see. Yeah, so there you go. Because I saw kicked off, and I was like, that sounds violent.
That's
I don't want to
mean.
kick anyone off. So I was like, no. But I just kicked CC off, so I'm so sorry. But we do have Day that's on right now. So Day is going to be audio only. Day, are you there? I see Day there, so I think we might have to wait a second. They're muted.
Oh, hello.
There we
hello.
go.
Can you hear me?
How's it going? Yes, we can
Hey,
hear you.
Day.
It's great to be back.
Yes, so that's actually what's really fun, is that Day was part of our previous anthology, Transphoria. So that's really cool that you're back. And tell us a little bit about your story. If you want to tell us about your previous story too, for many people to try to jog their memory.
Yes. So my previous story was for Transphoria, Lifeline's Trans Pride anthology, and it was like kind of a black and white cartoon pastiche that's like based on the fact that a lot of those old cartoon characters, they look pretty much the same across genders, except they're wearing like a pink bow. And so my story for Transphoria was about a bunch of the citizens of Cartoonburg discover that like gender is arbitrary in that way, and try to get to the bottom of it. And it's called Assigned Genderette Bow. So it's but that's not this story. This story is it's called To Everything, and I love doing it. It's about a young woman who is ace, but has a crush on her best friend, and she's sort of struggling with insecurity of like, would anyone want to date, an ace person? I think that's an insecurity that a lot of people who are like ace but want a relationship can relate to. But the other, her love interest is also turns out to also be ace, and it's sort of the title and the story, I guess, question. So there's this idea that I think a lot of us are like of like being asexuality as like a lack of something, as like, it's just like you're just like, it's like but with something missing. But I really want to show just that wholesome relationship, and like no, nothing is nothing is missing. They have this relationship, and they have everything. They have a full life, full relationship. And
yeah, I love that this really showed like some of the diversity within the ace community, because I feel like there's this perception of people under the ace umbrella, ace-spec people, is all sort of having the same group of feeling exactly the same way, which is not true. I mean, which is why, especially in this case, the word aromantic exists because you can be asexual and not aromantic.
And that's why this anthology was so exciting, and I think means so much because it really covers so much and so many different stories that can be told.
Yeah, that was something we were certainly talking about seeking out from the beginning, and I think came sort of easily just in what people submitted, and that, like, you know, we weeded some things out just because we had a couple of, you know, stories that hit on very similar notes, but there were a lot of stories that just, like, oh, you know, the nuance of it sort of came naturally to people, which I think is largely a reflection of it being a mostly ace group of people that applied and wrote stories for this. So it's very, like, it was very cool to just be able to, like, come in and pick up all these different types of stories, and hopefully will for people reading it as well, to see quite a few different things.
And going back to the Transphoria story and this one, how was that writing process different here? What do you feel like is similar and different about those two stories and your writing style?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't normally do slice of life. I don't normally do things that are, like, so straightforwardly kind of cute and wholesome. So this was very new. This was very new for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's what we liked about it so much too, was that kind of slice of life aspect of it. It's just there wasn't as many stories in this vein, and again, your style of writing, that it just kind of really stood out to us because of that.
It's so funny because usually with the anthologies, we always say, like, oh, like, be creative, do like a off the wall genre story, and then for this anthology, we must have said too much because we got so many off the wall genre stories that, like, you know, a cute slice of life story with, like, fun characters really stood out with your script day. So, you know,
yeah, the characters
good on you knowing when to send. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, just the characters are such dorks, and I love them.
We love that about them too, and it's so funny. I'm sure everyone's already talked about how you know, in Transphoria there was such a, you know, cartoony, like, you know, off the wall distinct story, and then you come to this, like, very, you know, relatable, fun, adorkable, quote unquote. So, like, you know, it's a great juxtaposition. So I really had fun with that.
Bill, do you have a last question for this one before day goes?
Let's I think I'm sure that to some extent already we've already talked about the idea of, like, you know, the A spectrum being so wide, and how, you know, when we were going into the curation of this anthology, wanting to make sure we covered the bases of, like, all types of relationships, whether that's, you know, Aro ace folks, and, like, the importance of, like, you know, familial and, like, friend relationships, but also we wanted to make sure that we covered asexual but not aromantic relationships, and, like, you know, the bonds that you can form, and, like, you know, the relations and the relatability that you could find to finding someone who identifies similar to you and experiences similar attraction. So not really a question, but I just wanted to compliment you on that day. I think you really captured that really well, and it covered a base in this anthology that was important to us.
Thank you, and also shout out to Amelia, whose art is
Did amazing.
Just fantastic. Brings so much to the story.
It's been great working with both of you. Day, do you want to quickly outro yourself, let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, I can be found on Blue Sky and Tumblr as probably Day. I'll just post my link tree in the chat. And I haven't been posting much lately, but I've, you know, always working on different writing and projects.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Day. And it's always nice hearing from you, and it's cool working with you, not just once but twice. And I got to do the violent. I got to do the violent thing now and kick you out. But I appreciate you talking. Thank you so much. So now we are on with Jeremy with his story, but I do want to mention this comment here from Kid Penn. Is it all finished submissions, or do you match up artists with writers? I'm an ace artist and be interested in collaborating with a writer, but I've never made any stories about the topic. Yeah, if we ever do this anthology again, and we always return to anthology ideas, so never say never. The way we do things is that we have a submission form, an open submission form. So follow us on all the social media places, and we either get writers and artists paired up together, they submit together, we get writers who do a script, we get artists sending portfolios, and if a writer is alone and an artist is alone and we both like their style, we combine them together, and that's usually how we do our things. We never want to gatekeep, honestly. We always want to give opportunities to people. If they know an artist, don't know an artist, like we want to give as many opportunities as possible. So but Jeremy, why don't you talk about your story specifically? You talked about how you got on here, but yeah, I want to hear about your short.
Yeah, so it's an interesting process for me because, writer is what I normally do. So this was my first time editing, but writing is absolutely an everyday thing for me. But as we were, editing everybody else's and going through, I wanted to sort of wait and see what we had and see if there was a gap that I felt like we needed something in. And for the most part, we filled all the gaps that I would have normally jumped into sci-fi and fantasy stuff and sort of the more fun and outlandish things. What I felt like I had to offer that wasn't necessarily there was experience with making comics in sort of an ace space in the world out there. And specifically this story is a little bit of an origin story about my sort of becoming more aware of my sexuality and understanding where I stand on that, as well as my collaborators, but is also very much a story about myself, Bailey Rosalind, and Kelly Fitzpatrick, who were the creative team behind the Gwenpool story at Marvel, sort of having this weird opportunity where it was sort of the first time that we were in this not even really a room, but online together, making this book with an all ace team of folks. And I kept writing things in the script and hitting on ideas and jokes and things like that. I was like, oh, I never really considered this when I was thinking of my own, sexuality, but it makes sense. And I kept getting reactions back from them by email that were like, oh my God, I never thought of this. Oh, this was a thing for me too. Or, the traditional, I'm in this picture and I don't like it sort of situation. Because, we kept hitting on these things that we had never realized were so tied to, being on the ace spectrum, because we'd never really had the opportunity to sort of be in a creative space with all ace people before and talk about this stuff. The funniest one that popped up for me is as I was writing the story with Gwen, I was trying to think of she's wanting to be in a relationship. She's wanting to feel like, she matters, especially as this is a romance story. This is a romance anthology. So she's trying to get herself out there and present in the comics and sort of pushing a relationship that she knows has no hope of being physical, just like her favorite, Rogue and Gambit, which is something that a lot of us grew up with. And I've found particularly a lot of people who identify as ace were like, oh, it's so hot. They clearly love each other, but they can't touch. There's no possibility of a sexual relationship there. And that weirdly was something that a lot of everybody in the group sort of vibed with, was aware of, but hadn't really put together as a thing for us. So having that opportunity to take this story of making a story and make it a comic in our anthology, and also allow that to sort of serve as an introduction for the anthology and to us and to asexuality and the sort of spectrum of it to people who might not be as familiar, but were supporting this book. It's sort of killed several birds with one stone.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this story, because we've never had an intro story. Like we've done a lot of these anthologies before. For by visibility, we never had it. Transphoria, we never had it. We've had forwards. Like that's kind of the most we've had with it. Herology, we had a forward, and Rainbow Campus, we had a forward. But to have a story that is so personal, and obviously, like I've known your career, and I think you still did a great job, even if you don't know your career. And it just the meshing of the creative team did so well here. And again, just telling us what is this all about from a very personal view, which I really enjoyed. Phil, you got any questions for Jeremy? I will also add, just like it's so fun to like kind of be on all spectrums of that, where we got to see you as a writer, get to see you as an editor, as a friend. It was just like a really fun process in that way. Where it's like, oh, I get to edit, I get to see Jeremy's writing and also get to edit with him. That's really cool.
Definitely echo that sentiment. I think it was so interesting because, like you said, Jeremy, you kind of waited till the end to decide what you were going to write for the anthology. You want to see what we got from our submission and curation process. And both Kat and I were convinced you were going to write, a genre story of some sort, because, that's so in your wheelhouse. So we were both surprised when you went the route of this introduction, but honestly, it ended up being the perfect choice. I think it's, as Kat said, like it's humorous, but very personal. Like it very much is valuable to someone who knows you or doesn't know you. And also, a reader who maybe isn't as informed about the Ace and Aros spectrums. I think you do a great job of introducing the anthology, introducing yourself. It's a really fine line that you strike. And I thought that also giving Bailey and Kelly their opportunities to tell their own stories in the same thing. It just, it really welcomes you into the anthology as a first story. So really, really. Go ahead.
And that's what we want. No, I was going to say that's what we want from this anthology is like, it goes back to, we never want to gatekeep. We want the opportunity for people who know everything about asexuality and being aromantic, or people who are just discovering themselves, or people that don't have any knowledge about it. And I think this story did a good job of being like, yeah, you could be anyone and read this book. And that's, again, always what we want to do with these books. That way, like, people get to learn and may learn more about themselves. And that's kind of always been the point and why we do this, is for people to feel seen, but also for people to, again, just to learn about the community.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that's particularly valuable at times with asexuality and with the ace spectrum, because we are such a more complicated and more nuanced sexuality and group of sexualities than some, because I think it's people may intentionally not grasp bisexuality or any number of other things, but it's one of those things that, like, once you explain it, it's not particularly difficult to explain. But even in my case, I sort of came to the understanding of being demisexual through writing characters who were queer and sort of trying to understand, reading up on demisexuality and being finding myself going, well, isn't that just everybody? And realizing that no, it wasn't. That's not just what everybody's experiencing. That is, what I'm experiencing and what a fairly small percentage of other people are experiencing out there. So sort of getting into the muck and mud of how you define and all the little pieces of it, I think really helps, just because I think there's a tendency for people to say, oh, asexuality, that would mean that I've never been attracted to a person, and that's not true. So I must not be that. Whereas, there's quite a few more nuanced things in there.
I want to read this comment, and then Phil, you had a question, so I want you to have an opportunity to ask your question. But XP says, it's mentioned on the Kickstarter, there's already some libraries that are going to have the book. I'm really glad that people who aren't aware of this may find it in the future. That's been honestly our big effort this whole year, is to try to get it into more people's hands or outside of the crowdfunding space. So actually all three of us are going to be at ALA, which is the library conference in Philadelphia. So we're going to really push that, not just for this book, but for Transphoria, by visibility, to really get all those books kind of in libraries, because we feel it's very important. And again, Jeremy has some wonderful books as well for all talks of spectrums, so and LGBTQ storylines. So go check that out for sure, and go to your local library. But Phil, you did have a quick question.
I did. Very quickly, since we're pushing up on time, Jeremy, I'm curious, did you have any other story ideas that almost made it to fruition before you landed on this introduction? Any genres you really wanted to tackle?
I sort of played a lot with doing something fantasy-wise, because that's sort of one of those, you dance with the one that brought you kind of things, because I am, it's interesting to me to see how much fantasy there is in comic books now, because when I was working on Princeless at the beginning, now 15 years ago, there weren't comedy stories or fantasy stories in comics. It was like us and Skull Kickers, and that's it. So two comics on sort of opposite ends of the audience spectrum. So it was very cool to like see that, and that was something that certainly going into the process, I was like, all right, maybe something that feels a little more like Princeless, that feels like what people know and expect from me. But then like there are several great fantasy stories in here, and were even more that were submitted. So it was like, I got to find something that I really feel like is a unique point of view that I bring to this, which is where this story came in. You're on mute, Kat. Kat, you're on mute.
We have thank you. We have our next creator. So if you'd like to share and to introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ronnie Sisavath, and I'm kind of a young comic artist. I mean, we all are. I have a webcomic called Kai. Other than that, I worked on a few other Lifeline projects. And my comic short for this anthology is called Under the Stars. Should I go right into it?
Yeah, please jump in. I'm actually trying to find the art, though. We could share it as well.
Okay. So my comic is kind of like this sci-fi dystopian, or at least I wanted it to be dystopian. It doesn't really feel like it. About
I felt it for sure.
Yeah. It's kind of existential. It's about this Aro ace woman struggling with loneliness because her world is ending soon, and basically it kind of touches on that, the feeling of, well, I'll just go back and say that this whole thing was inspired by the idea of like how to deal with the climate crisis and like all of the crises going on around us in the world. People say like to find someone you love and, kind of just like focus on your loved ones, your family, and like what does that look like for somebody who's Aro ace and who doesn't fit into the, heteronormative. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here. And so she meets B, who's another ace and demi-romantic person. They really hit it off and develop this beautiful friendship. And I don't know, it's about like resilience and platonic love.
Yeah, and the importance of that too. I think sometimes we live in such a world where romantic love feels like the only important relationship, but it's not. All relationships, all love are important, and I love how that story explores that. Being the artist and the writer, like, what was that creative process like for you? And I know you've obviously done it before with the webtoon and everything as well, but doing it for anthology filled with other stories and for a publisher.
Yeah, it is crazy. I did ask for an artist, but you were like, no, you have to. And I appreciate that. Thank you. It's fun. It's a lot of work, but I get to kind of make it exactly my vision. And also I get to change everything along the way. So that's fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
I really appreciated how this this story sort of dealt with the concept of, I think we've talked a lot about how ace people aren't necessarily just people without connections. They're not people who aren't funny or don't have love for people, even if it isn't a sexual or romantic love. And I think I love that this story sort of hit on like, I don't know, it sort of hits the same space for me as like talking about the fact that people, just because a person is atheist doesn't mean they don't have any like sense of conscience or caring about things or morality. And just because a person is asexual doesn't mean that they don't care about people and that they don't feel like they want to be near people or that they get lonely sometimes.
Yeah. Another thing that the short kind of touches on is like getting older too, and having your former friends kind of pull away from you to focus on their romantic relationships and kids. And you totally understand that, but it's also like it hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
It's something to deal with when you're in your 30s. Which I'm not in my 30s yet, but I'm almost there.
Are you 29 or
28?
Oh, yeah, 20. I was gonna say that 29. I'll say that that's like worse than I'm 30. It's worse than turning 30 because you're anticipating it, and then when you're 30, you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but
we were talking about the idea that creators didn't get to see the other stories until the Kickstarter goes live. So yours being more of a sci-fi bend and more dystopian bend, were you what were your feelings of the other genres that you saw on the page? And again, your webtoon also, it's not a sci-fi. Like, what made you want to explore that genre?
I just want to say that I love all of these stories and I can't wait to read them. I think everyone did a fantastic job with the kind of subject matter. And for me, I don't know. Like I said, it was inspired by kind of like I was in a very doomer mindset at the time when this inspiration hit for this story, and it just kind of evolved organically from there. But I also put a lot of I originally envisioned it as a lot more somber, but I kind of turned it into almost like a slice of life feeling kind of thing too. Like there's a lot of humor in it, a lot of cute scenes. So I put my own little spin on sci-fi, I think. My own cute little spin.
Yeah, no, I agree. Jeremy, do you have any last questions for this? I think we have like 2 more minutes left.
No, I don't. This is what I really liked. So it was a standout for me from the beginning, and I think that obviously your art really complements your writing and everything in there. So it's a wonderful combination, and I can definitely see you're sort of like, I get to really fully realize what my story idea is. So
I think my last question before before you plug your social media is, what was it like working for us as Lifeline Comics from this point of view? Because again, you've done covers, you did your webtoon. What was it like again, kind of working for a publisher, doing something separate from like webtoon? Like, was it different? Did it feel the same?
Yeah, I think it feels different. And then one thing I thought about earlier with the question about comic length is that I'm always so surprised how much you can fit on one page of a comic. Like coming from webtoons where like, everything is so big and spread out. I'm not as familiar with just like a comic page as some other people are. So that I think is a struggle for me that I am still working on. I think I'm getting a little better. But yeah, I mean, it was great though. It was a fantastic experience, and I'd recommend anybody to work with y'all, and I'd love to work with y'all again. Oh, audio again.
Yeah. No, we love working with you as well, and we'd love to work with you again. I was going to ask another question. Now it slipped my brain. Oh, sequentials. Do you feel like you'd work more in the sequential field, or is Webtoon more what you're comfortable with?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely fine with sequential, and yeah, I mean, I would love to work on more comic books. It's really fun.
Awesome. Well, what plugs would you like to share here?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram, Savath_art, or Blue Sky Savath Art. I'm also, you can find my comic on Webtoon and Tapas. It's just, if you look up you should find it.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. All right, bye. All right, and then we are going to bring up our next guest here, who is Tommy, which is so fun for on this side. So we've been on her podcast before, actually for Transphoria. So it's really, really cool to have you contribute to this book. And I love all that you write. So it's really cool to get this mecha-styled story. But first, Tommy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Tommy Trimbath, she, her pronouns. Forgive my voice today. I'm a baritone at the best of times, but I'm coming over a sinus infection, so I'm even lower than usual. Yeah, I'm a podcaster, comic writer. I came out with my first book via Kickstarter last year when we transformed. Kat even gave me some very helpful tips in the process of that. I host the podcast Transcending Comics and Giant Size Violence. And for Transphoria, I wrote a little story called Monochromatic, which is exploring the ideas of like being aromantic or asexual through the lens of giant combining robots. Like, I've long wanted to explore this from the other point of view of like, oh, hey, what's polyamory like for a transformer like Devastator or like the Power Rangers Megazord? But for this, I was like, wait, we can inverse that. Like, just for this topic, what's it like to be someone that doesn't want to be just an arm, or feels like it seems kind of reductive or diminutive to like have the best version of yourself be the version that only exists like when you're with 3 or 4 other people. So this is kind of that exploration of seeing someone become their own like triple changer, or wanting to be something other than just an arm in a truck. Why not learn to fly? Why not be a helicopter? Be whatever the heck you want.
I love that. I am going to pass the mic to Jeremy to ask first question. So just give me 1 second.
Yeah, I was going to say this was a story that was a lot of fun to read. Just jumping in. Was this something that you'd wanted to explore, doing more stuff with sort of the robots and transformers? Was that related to? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people who love to compare robots and asexual people. Was that a sort of a starting point at all for you, or was that something that sort of like came together in an interesting way of like, yes, robots are complicated too?
Yeah. About a year and a half before writing this, I had put together a little poem, short story that was written from the perspective of like the Megazord and like the existential terror of what it's like to just come alive for 3 minutes and being part of all these different voices in your head and these minds that make up your body. And I like that is probably going to take shape with the serial numbers rubbed off in a future comic of mine. But this, I was like, okay, well, let's take this from the opposite point of view. And in my area, I'm friends with a lot of polyamorous trans people, but my best friend happens to be asexual, and or at least on the asexual aromantic spectrum. And it was really great getting to kind of talk to them and explore some of these ideas through their perspective. And they're also a huge lover of giant robots, Power Rangers, Transformers, and we kind of put our heads together to submit stories. And I really kind of wrote this for their sake, since like I'm myself am not asexual or aromantic, but I have some people very close to my heart who are. So this was sort of like okay, I love robots. I love these people. Let's write them as giant robots.
And something I really love about this story is that I'm a big Power Rangers fan, but I'm not a big Transformers fan. Like, I don't know much about it. I'm a 90s kid, not as much an 80s kid. So, but you don't really need to know much about the genre to understand the allegories and the funness of it, right? You make it very fun for obviously the Transformer or Power Rangers fan, but also for me, someone who doesn't really know much about the genre.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to come at this from a perspective of like someone who only knows these things from like a toy commercial. And in fact, brainstorming this one night, like I was looking up old Transformers toy commercials like for the Triple Changers, and I was a kid who didn't have cable for a while growing up, so I knew what it was like to like just know these things as toys and commercials, but not like have all the lore that you might get watching it every Saturday morning. So yeah, I want just enough lore elements in there that people could pick up on it a bit without feeling like they're missing out on some big backdrop of whatever these characters are up to the rest of the year.
Is there any Easter eggs though, maybe for the hardcore fan, you feel for like if you really love mecha stuff?
Ooh, I don't think I really had any chance to do that. I mean, if you're a really big fan of flags, you might pick up that like we colored our main character after a very relevant flag of the same exact color scheme, but I'm not the hugest Transformers fan either. I probably could have found a way to squeeze in some Easter eggs, but like I didn't want this to be like Cybertron or like so clearly Transformers. Like, nah, this is more of a solar punk utopia Transformers rather than whatever's going on in the modern Transformers comics.
I love that. Jeremy, any other questions?
I don't think I do have any other questions. This was a fun story. I guess I'm curious. You were talking about wanting to not necessarily have it be Cybertron or something like that. I wonder, like, what's the do you have a name in mind for what your legally distinct but similar to Transformers are?
Ooh, I just call them constructs. That's
I like
kind of my go-to with mechs. Like, should I get to that and when we transform, I want that to be the thing. Because, like, if you look at Power Rangers over the years, there's varying levels of sentience in their giant combining robots. Like, some of them are animals. Some of them are, like, gods. If you watch the original Japanese show, like, their giant combined robot literally is God. So I feel like when you call them constructs instead of robots, now they're not just like mindless automatons. Now they could be anything. They could be like sentient light forms or, I don't know, just any kind of sentient thing that's built out of physical matter.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share about the story in particular, or plugs you want to include for everyone to find you?
Let's see. Nothing immediately is coming to mind, but yeah, I just do really love writing about robots. So keep following my work if you want to see more stories that are exploring different ideas of identity and queerness through the lens of transforming robots and superheroes. If you're looking to find me, my coolest stuff that also deals with transformation in a way you can find on Instagram as @KeymasterCollective. I don't post often, but I post when it's noteworthy. You can see some of my color changing artwork that I sell at festivals, conventions, and come next weekend, a Pride.
Which Pride are you going to?
It's a small one called it's Ankeny Pride in Iowa, but the people that run it actually own a comic book store in the area, and it was one of the first to carry my comic, so thought it'd be the perfect place to set up for my first ever Pride festival outing.
That's awesome. I'm very excited to hear how that goes. We do a lot of Pride, so it's always fun to hear other people's perspective.
Yeah. You can also find me on Blue Sky. I'm just @TommyTrimbath on there. I'm on Facebook and Twitter as well, but yeah, I'm much less on there, but Blue Sky is kind of where it's at. And yeah, check out my podcast. We're going to be coming out with a new season of Transcending Comics pretty soon here, and staggered release of Giant Size Violence, and I'm going to be producing the Repatterning podcast later this year. And we're going to have a very exciting first guest. I can't reveal who it is, but I promise everyone on this call has heard of them.
Very cool. That's a good tease. I can't wait to see how that all comes out. Thank you so much. And again, it's great that we're finally working with each other on this end. It was really, really fun.
Yeah, we're just hoping we get to do it again soon.
I hope so.
Absolutely.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So we have our next guest, who is Lore. Lore, let us know when you're in. Let's see.
I'm here.
Awesome. Well, if you want to introduce yourself, let us know about your story.
Okay, sure. So, hey everybody, I am Lore. I am the creator of Cupid, and I have been a writer for most of my life, and this was actually the first comic I have ever written.
That's awesome. Is this like a path you've always wanted to take, or are you more of like a prose creator?
So, I always wanted to get into comic creation. It was just one of those things where I was more or less like, I'm not sure how I would end up doing it. Then I end up stumbling across the ad for submissions on Blue Sky, and I told my partner, why not? Let me just try writing a script for the very first time. And after that, everything happened.
Yeah, I was your editor on this one. I say stunned to learn this was your first attempt.
Seriously,
it was very good.
It was probably the funniest thing from all the feedback, because it's like, this was your first comic? Absolutely, because I've never done this before.
Yeah, I know my first comic script wasn't this clean, so that's for sure. Yeah, I remember I started sort of giving you feedback on some formatting stuff, and you were like, oh yeah, I've never actually done this before. So I was like, oh, okay. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, it got 10 times funner after that.
Yeah, and I this was one that we've said it about a few different ones, but this is one that I think all of us read and connected with, I think, for different reasons as we were doing it, because I know Kat immediately was like, oh, that's a story about dealing with apps,
dating apps. I could relate to that. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I love the sort of like magical realism aspect of it, of like, starting out with the app, which sort of manifests a literal Cupid, who was sort of helping this character through sort of understanding themselves and figuring out what it is that they want and need as compared to like what has been prescribed to them and they think they need.
Right. And I think that's the biggest part of Ace Cupid. A lot of what was mentioned in it that the audience will see should they purchase the anthology is that it comes from a lot of real life things that I've dealt with. A lot of the dialogue has actually been said to me, or things that I've actually just told myself, because it was a way to comfort myself as I was going through the transitionary stages of just trying to figure out my identity, figure out who I am. And I really resonated with the main character. It took me a while to pretty much figure out like who she was, who I wanted her to be, and who she really portrayed herself to be. Because after a while, she started taking shape of her own, and she started just guiding the story herself. And she's going through what I would say is the formative years of adulthood. And in that, just self-discovery in general, but just knowing that you're loved on a wider scale it means so much, really, especially when you don't have it in yourself to love yourself.
Yeah, no, and I think that's always what a lot of people are trying to deal with is self-worth, and especially in the life of social media and everything else. It's I think that's what anyone can relate to in this story for sure. We actually have a really cool question from XP. With writing a comic for the first time, did you have to describe the panels? Did you just write from a normal story? I'll say from our point of view, and then Laura, you could say yours. I'll say that we normally don't accept the script unless it's in the format, or at least some sort of construct to the format. And Laura, you did it. So you did a great job with that. But I want to hear from your point of view. This is the first time you did that. That's really cool.
So,
I didn't know that.
So that's just to reiterate, this was literally my first time. So all I really had were just script outlines that I looked up, little how-to guys, and then I was more or less looking at it just like, okay, I guess I'm gonna just write a story, try to put it in this format, and we'll figure it out. Ace Cupid actually went through about 13 revisions before I ended up submitting it, and then it
Wow.
went through revisions after that because I'm not gonna lie, my editors they knew more about it than I did, so it was just more or less like, you know, it really worked out. But I did write it from a normal story perspective starting off, and then after that I tried to condense it a little bit and then condense it further because I'm a very descriptive writer. So a lot of the panel explanations just had a lot of my wordiness, to put it frankly, and it ended up getting somewhat not really diminished, but somewhat cut down to, you know, accommodate for the page count. But at the same time, the artist, India, she really did take my vision and make it 10 times better. It literally translated 1-to-1. So yeah, so writing it from a normal story perspective, then turning it around and trying to put it in a comic format and giving it just enough direction so the artist knew what to do, it definitely helped because we ended up blending together and it made this something beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a key sort of thing in there is, you know, I think one of the biggest things transitioning between writing comics and writing prose both ways, honestly, is just changing a lot of the like basics and how you write. You know, you got to think about, you know, a lot of people who come from prose and start writing comics, you know, turn in things with page, you know, where their descriptions of panels contain 4 or 5 times as many words as their dialogue, and then, you know, the dialogue is very sort of naturalistic. There's a lot of pauses and ands and buts, and you know, I think getting used to sort of the economy of comics and how little space there is on a page, or you know, sometimes how much what the artist can do with the space is one of the most challenging changes over. And then when you find yourself going back to prose, you have to be like, oh, all right, I actually have a lot of room. I can stretch out and be funny and you know, give more voice than necessarily what's possible in a comic.
Right.
Yeah.
Because yeah, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, this is just more of a compliment, but I hope this process has helped also be like, oh, I want to like do more comics because again, you have such a talent. So hopefully, it gave you the tools to kind of do more of it because you have such a good talent.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely did. I learned a lot, especially from the different critiques that I got, the feedback that I got, just being able to interact with honestly all of you and also India. And I think the thing that really got me at like in this was that I took a chance on something, and even if it didn't pan out, I still would have had a comic script at the end of the day. So I could have did whatever with it. But this was one of the times where I took a chance, like a literal shot in the dark, and it just came out into something that I'm very proud to say has my name on it. As well as that, it did make me want to continue writing comics. Ace Cupid is probably one of my favorite things to look back on, getting to like the mid part of this year. So this anthology means the world to me.
I love that. And also, I mean, what's great about shorts too in comics, and we've seen it actually a few times with our other submissions, either if it did get in or didn't get in, a lot of people expand it to their own stories and they do their own thing. And that's something we truly want to do for Lifeline too, is that so many people actually, do you have the rights to it? I'm like, we have the right for that story, that little short story for the time being, for like a year or two. But then after that, A, you get that short story, and then B, you also get the opportunity whenever to create more of that story. And that's something we always want to do with these things too, is there for people to get that opportunity to do that with their stories.
Yeah, because from Ace Cupid, well, this is kind of a shameless plug, but I was and I'm still am developing a TV script for a show called Wild Child, and they're set in the same world. Jeremy actually gave me the idea for it because with the whole magical realism bit, I was just like, oh wow, like Wild Child also is magical realism. And I thought about it and I said, oh no, they would exist in the same universe. So this is actually starting with that. But working on that, working on like a small novella in the same universe. So yeah, no, it really did, allow me, even though with everything else, it does allow me to continue growing my craft and actually figuring out other things and just not staying stagnant.
That's awesome. Now, Phil, you just joined in. We do have another creative team. Is it okay if we go to the next creative team, or do you have any burning questions for Laura?
Just want to give my compliments, Lord. Ace Cupid is a fantastic story, very relatable to, whether you're ace spec or not. It's something that I think everybody it's something I think everybody has felt and can relate to. So you did a fantastic job, and really excited to see what we can see, anything you come up with in the future.
That really means a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And you got any plugs? Oh, and Jeremy, do you have anything?
I was going to say the same thing. Do you want to let people know where they can find you and find the stuff you're working on now?
Absolutely. So you can find me as Unlock the Lore. I am on Blue Sky, Tumblr, Tapas, where I post a lot of my original fiction. And I believe I'm still on Pillow Fort. I'm not on X anymore because we all know. But anyway, aside from that, I'm currently working on Wild Child. It is a script, but I'm also working on a light novel that I will be publishing sometime in July, I believe. And I hope that you guys will, really get into the anthology. We have a lot of amazing people, and I hope that you enjoy Ace Cupid when you're able to read it.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome, Laura. Thanks for being on.
No problem. I appreciate you guys for having me.
Of course.
See you later.
All right,
peace.
We're gonna jump into our next creators here, which are Yuri and Jen. They're officially on. I think they're just settling in. So Yuri and Jen wrote or created Mirror Mirror. So can we hear you guys?
Hello.
Hello. I heard one voice.
That was Jen's voice.
All right, that's Jen. Yuri, are you on? All right, we'll wait for Yuri. Hopefully they jump on soon. But Jen, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story?
So hi, I'm Jen Tidwell. I have, I work in entertainment. I've done so for many years, almost 10 years, or maybe over 10 years at this point. And this is my first foray into writing a comic. I love comics so much. I read all the time. And the story that I submitted for this one is kind of it's a fairy tale. It's very much this is the kind of the Disney story I would have needed as a kid, that kind of affirmation and that understanding. And this is really, it really was just me talking to my younger self of like, hey, it's
Hello?
okay. Yuri!
Yuri's
okay.
on too, it
Hi,
sounds
guys.
like.
Hey,
Thank
everybody.
you. Awesome. Thank you for that, Jen. And Yuri, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Yuri Guzman. I'm an illustrator and comic artist. I have some books that I've drawn for Capstone Publishing called the Fantastic Freewheeler series. They're written by Molly Felder, and they're about a young kid with cerebral palsy who has superpowers and helps save the world and his friends.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that sounds awesome.
So, what's so funny? Me and Phil could actually talk about this a little bit more, but this is actually the first fairy tale story we've actually ever had in an anthology, and we get so many submissions. But there's something about this one that was like, you know what? Yeah, this is the time. This is the place to do it.
Sorry, just to expand on that, we've had the conversation a million times. We've gotten a lot of like fairy tale scripts that we've really liked, whether it's a take on an existing fairy tale, like a Rapunzel story for Herology, or an original story that positions itself as kind of like a classic fairy tale. But like Kat said, this was the first one we were able to make room for that, like really like touches on like a lot of like I think you want any good fairy tale is at its heart like a parable, and I think that you really touch on a lot of like feel it. Like I think you hit the nail on the head, Jen, when you said you wrote the Disney story you wish you had when you were a kid. I think you could feel that when you're reading it in like the the longing that both of the characters have for validation for their feelings, that that they and like escape from the societal pressures that they have felt growing up. So like, really great job capturing that feeling while also telling a really cool genre fairy tale story. Do you want to tell us how you came up with the idea?
I really appreciate all of that. I don't even remember, honestly. I think I just sat down and was thinking that I wanted to submit to this. I was really busy with work, and a lot of stuff happened around November, and I just sat down and I was like, I really want to, submit for this. What do I want to say? What do I have to say about this subject? And it just came, like, the dialogue just came out, and I kind of like worked backwards from there of like, this is what I want to say, and I think this is a good visual way to say it. And then I just submitted that, and seeing it, Erie's art for it, just fantastic. I cried like when I saw the pages, and like every new stage, I'm just like, oh, it's so beautiful, and it captures it so well. And I think it's a very emotional, like, Lloyd is a very emotional character, and Yuri's expressions and colors and layout is very expressive and like captures all of what he's feeling, I think, in such a beautiful way. And I really appreciate you guys pairing me with such an amazing artist.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen. And it's crazy that you say that, because I felt so similarly when I read the story. Because when I submitted, I love fantasy stuff, and I try to incorporate it into a lot of my work. But I also know when you submit as like artist only to be paired up, you don't know what you're gonna get. And the whole time I was thinking, I was like, I would love something fantasy, but at the same time, it's like, how would you do it? Because a very important part of this anthology is like representing people properly. And while fantasy can play a huge part of that, you also want to make sure that it's still relatable and believable. So when I first read your story, it like touched me so much. Like I'm already getting kind of emotional, because the first time I read it, I was so heartfelt, Jen. Like I wanted to share it with my closest friends. I'm like, I gotta wait until this thing's out. And I was already thinking, and I remember messaging you and like us going back and forth. It's like, what do we want this to look like? How do we want to approach it? We want everything to just go so well. And I remember just thinking this was just such a beautiful story, and you did such a good job of like writing this like world that has an air of whimsicalness to it, but we feel for the character. Your dialogue was just really well written, and like I was very honored and just happy to know that like I was paired up with you for this project.
Thank you.
And it's so beautiful to hear from this point of view. It really seems like you guys made a connection through the process of creating this book, which is really fun and special about comics.
Yeah, we worked
so
together on the designs for the characters, and just moving forward from there. And I didn't even like give a lot of like, I don't know if I gave enough feedback or too little feedback or and like all that kind of stuff. Whenever it came to it, you would just show me something and I'd be like, oh, that looks great. That looks exactly the way I thought it was going to look. There's the way that the story is told is kind of like, it's a tower, and you're going down the tower and back up the tower. And like, I remember when I submitted the story and I got back notes on like how to format it and stuff. I was like, I don't know how to describe what this is, but it however I did it worked out, because that's exactly how it turned out on the page. So
yeah, I really loved this story. It was an interesting thing for me, because I loved it, and I was immediately like, I wonder how Kat and Phil are going to feel about this, because I feel like this was very close both like message wise and in a lot of ways like genre wise to stuff I've written in the past, particularly Princeless, and it was one of those things that I was like, well, of course I would like this. it's very much like on brand for me. I'm gonna have to see how they feel about it. And in fact, like, it was one of those that, like, as we were talking about who should edit it, it was funny because I had a friend of mine that backed the Kickstarter and was going through and was like, oh, I think I can tell which ones you edited. Obviously, Mirror Mirror was one you worked on. And I was like, actually, no, because I felt like it was close enough to my own stuff and stuff I'd done that I was like, I don't want to put my fingerprints on this and make it just another, like, my fantasy story. I want to, like, let it breathe and be its own thing. And, so, it was like, all right, one of you guys has to take this one. I really like it, but I don't think I should be the one editing it.
I don't know if we already talked about this, but for anyone who isn't aware, the way that we handle editing is that Jeremy, Kat, and I each read all of the submissions, and then we had a meeting where we curated the book and we, gave our overall thoughts on all of the stories that made it in, so that all of our voices were there and all of our input was there. And then we had a lead editor, as Jeremy said, on each story who actually, like, went through in detail, gave the editing notes, worked back and forth with the creative team. So I think, Kat, you were the lead editor on this one, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
You're on mute.
I keep doing that because I've been having so many tabs open. I was the lead editor for that, and it was really, really fun to work with. We are pushing up for time, so why don't you guys give your social media tabs? Social media, not tabs. Social media.
You do have a lot of tabs open, don't you?
I have all those tabs open, but yeah, your social media handles. Maybe they should be called tabs now.
You can find me on Twitter on JK_Tidwell or on Blue Sky, which is just JK_Tidwell.Blue
And you could find me on Blue Sky and Instagram, both as Yuri G Draws.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining. Beautiful. And we're going to get our next guest up. So I'm going to get them all set. Let's see. All right. So we have our next guest. Two people might know each other in this scenario.
I know this person.
Oh yeah, you know me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you're
good.
Yes.
Yeah, you're
good.
I've heard you've done podcasts before.
A couple.
Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about your story.
Well, my name's Emily Martin. Emily C. Martin to some. Megamoth on the socials. I wrote the autobiographical tale, The Ace Files. Today I'm representing. These are real clothes from 1995. But my story is a little autobiographical tidbit of how media helped me realize where I fit in terms of identity and my relationships to other people and things like that. And the X-Files is referenced here. I also reference a lot of like the Trent Reznor stuff, but the combination of that is what kind of the filter through which I tell this story about how a 90s kid at the ripe young age of 14 couldn't figure out what was wrong with them, but all they knew was that Mulder and Scully's romance was the best romance before they kissed, of course. So yeah, that's and I go into a few deeper details, but it's something that I wanted to share because at the time I didn't have the words for it. I didn't know what I was or who I was. I just knew that I was weird, which is, I think something that a lot of people should hear, is that it's okay to be weird or feel like you're weird. I'm so happy that this is now something that is recognized, that we have the vocabulary to talk about it, and we have a community around it.
Yeah, this is really lovely, and it was fun for me because I knew, like, when we started working on this, I was like, Emily should submit something for this. Emily should do something with this. And I told you about it, and you had obviously done a lot of stuff with me, from podcasting to working on Princeless and all of that. And you were very like hesitant and unsure about this going in. You were like, I don't know if I can write it, if I can do it justice, if it's going to be any good. And then like going through these submissions, I hit it and I immediately was like, oh, this is Emily's voice. Like I got it. And then like, yeah, it was just like, it was a great story. And it was one of those that like, I waited to see how Phil and Kat scored it before I put up my score, because I was like, I know, like, you know, I can hear Emily clearly in this story. I don't know if they're gonna like hear it the same way.
And we all gave it a pretty, yeah. We all
Okay,
did,
that's
I think you were the first
Yeah,
to the
yes,
anthology. I think we were all just like, oh yeah.
Oh, geez. These glasses make me feel more pink than I am, but although they're actually not the rose glasses that I would be wearing in 1995. But yeah, well, it's a personal story, and thank you for recognizing my voice, because it's really my first script that I have written, really, that's been in a comic, that, you know, something that is 100% me, that is not me like selling my own zines at conventions and stuff, but which is valid. I'm just saying, like, you know, self-publish is published. But yeah, I'm just glad that I was recognizable, because usually I don't stay on topic that well. But yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh no. So but yeah, like I was with a lot of these things. One of the people who really inspired me to tell a personal story was Maya Kobe, who wrote Genderqueer, and he's a good friend of mine. We see each other pretty regularly because we both live in the North Bay area. So, but that, you know, the confidence was their confidence was inspiring. So, shout out to
And what was it like, you know, obviously you knew who we were. What was it like working with a friend, and for both of you, Jeremy and Emily, what was it like kind of going into a project like this with a friend, unlike, you know, maybe someone you don't know? Like, did it change the way you wrote anything or created anything, or did it affect anything?
I felt more confident about it. Like, I also, knowing that Jeremy knows what I mean in my voice and everything, that I feel like I was a little bit more, I felt more safe to submit something more personal. But I know since everyone was here, hi Amelia, and everyone was here, that he'd also be honest and give me good feedback, which is really like what's great about working with Jeremy, is that we can give each other feedback. We don't really need to a lot of the time, but like we can communicate that way because we've done that for so many years together.
Yeah, this story was really easy to edit. It was much more like weeding to some extent of just like, hey, like this is more than you need. You're saying the same thing a few different ways. Just, you know, pull back a little bit, or weirdly in a couple of cases, saying like, hey, you have a good artist on this story. Let your artist do some of the work. You don't have to necessarily say it. Which is, you know, something that I often tell myself, or, you know, have editors tell me. But you know, was in Emily's case, it's like, I know your artist knows what you're trying to say, so like, because you are that person. So like, you know, just pull it back a little bit, give yourself room to draw rather than necessarily filling it up with panels.
Yeah, and it's kind of an open, like, it's a very, I mean, my style is very illustrative. So this particular comic is different from like a lot of the Princeless stuff, which is a little, you know, which is family entertainment, TM. But the Ace Files was a little bit more of what my personal style would be for something like illustration or printmaking. So I wanted to lead into that a little bit more, but still keep some of the cartooniness. of Princeless, you know, or that came through with Princeless, just because telling the story is funny, and it needs to be fun for me, because, you know, not always, like, these journeys are not always easy or fun, but it is, you know, it is something that I really did think needed to reflect my my 90s-ness. So I host the comic as Jonathan Frakes in Fact or Fiction Beyond Belief. So I don't know if you all
Just made
caught
up by a
that.
writer.
Yeah. So yeah. And I also felt, just being a little bit more artsy, I felt a lot more confident doing that with you all. Because I was trying to be as like genuine as I could.
Yeah, no, that totally came through as well. Now, Phil, do you have any questions before we let Emily go?
No question, just compliments. As a big X-Files fan, was my first obsession. Like, very felt seen by your story, and
Thank you.
You know that I echo what you said in the beginning of this call. Best relationship ever until they kissed.
Well,
yeah.
you know what's so fun too is that I didn't really watch the X-Files. Like, I knew it from afar. Like, I studied a lot of television, but that was also what was really cool to read the stories. Like, if you just been in any fandom, you kind of get it, you know?
Yeah.
It really affected so many people's sexuality across the spectrum, I feel like, you know.
Oh yeah, and I've been rewatching it, and now I have some different reasons that I think Mulder and Scully should stay platonic, but you know, I think it was such a new thing, and it was so, like I said, I felt seen, that I saw this relationship, this romantic relationship that was not sexual, that was deep in different ways, and you know, but I'll go into it further in the comic itself, so please check it out.
Why don't you let people know where they can find you online, where they can pick up your stuff, and I mean, tell them about, you have a podcast about horror movies?
Oh, I have this little podcast called Progressively Horrified. I don't know, Jeremy, have you heard about it?
No, I've never heard of it.
So
That
for
sounds like a cool one.
For the rest of you at home, Jeremy was the one who created it, and I actually came on, like, I co-hosted after a while of it being in session. But that's Progressively Horrified on Patreon, whereas I am Megamoth on Patreon. Check us all out. And Megamoth on Blue Sky, Prog Horror Pod on Blue Sky. And you can see my adorable GeoCities portfolio at megamoth.net.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, we are going to get our last guest on now. So we have Sarah, and this is for Unicorns and Monsters.
Unicorns and Monsters.
Hello.
This is such a fun. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for coming on. And this is such a fun story because it was, you know, you read a lot of submissions, right? And you're just like, okay. You just go through it. And this one like made me stop in my tracks because it's like, hey, I was planning on telling this story, but I'm going to tell this story instead. That was my intro. But how about you introduce yourself and tell us about the story?
Hi, my name is Sarah Neela Elkins. I'm a writer and an artist. I've chronic ossifying tennis elbows, so I haven't been doing as much art as I used to. But I've been working in comics since 2008, mostly as an assistant, as a flatter. I worked on Anthology, did a whole bunch of stuff on that. Inking, coloring, flatting, drawing one comic in that as well. Due to my arm issues, I've been focusing more on writing prose and web novels lately. For my story for this is Unicorns and Monsters. And originally I was going to write a comic about a final girl with a Valkyrie for a girlfriend. And that didn't happen because I was just so stressed out last November that I ended up writing this poem, and I decided that the poem had to be the comic. and I haven't done poetry in a very long time, but it just hit me that I had to write this poem and get it out. And so I wrote the poem, I wrote a comic script around it, and I submitted that. And Ferio Wind illustrated it for the Ace and Arrow anthology and did an amazing job, and it looks so fantastic. I just love their work.
Yeah, this was one that I know, Kat talked about this a little bit, but as we were reading, it was one that like really got your attention as you were reading. It was very, intense and dealing very specifically with there were things that were happening last November, things that continue to be happening, that like, yeah, it even as we're running this Kickstarter, sometimes you hit the point of like, I really want to talk about this cool thing that we're doing, but also the world is on fire and there are monsters everywhere.
And that's interesting in hindsight, because I think we had the submissions before that, and I guess after that too. So it's so interesting now looking back. I was like, oh wow, I guess that was around that time. Like I didn't remember that we had the submissions then.
I actually had to look it up on Discord because I shared a rough draft of the poem on a friend's Discord server on November 11th. And I had been trying to write a comic script before that to submit. And it wasn't coming together because all of my brain's RAM was going to the election and everything that was happening. And then I just was like, okay, I'm writing a poem and I'm making a comic out of a poem. And it's a very intense poem.
It is, but go ahead, Trevor.
I was going to say, I think one of those things for writers, when you write long enough, occasionally it's just like, I just have this thing that I need to put somewhere. And a lot of times that's, for people who aren't poets by trade, that goes into poetry. You're just like, I just need to, like, this thought has to live somewhere that's not in my head for a while. And that is, that's a very intense feeling and one that I both feel myself and could sort of feel in this story as you were reading it. So it really made you sit up and pay attention as you're going through I'm sure Will reading the anthology, but definitely did when we were going through the submissions.
I'm honored that it actually made people feel things.
No, it did, right from the first panel.
Like Kat said, I think that there's something very powerful about the way you kind of took us through your thought process of the story you were going to write, and then the story that you needed to tell and that needed to be told and that we needed to read. I think anyone, I would hope, who is supporting this anthology would experience the same feelings that you talk about in this poem and would feel the same. The world is on fire, the same, we're surrounded by monsters, impossibility of the world that we live in today. And I think that, part of the reason we do this anthology is, to put some good out there and put some light out there. And I think that, in order to have that, you also have to kind of acknowledge the things that aren't good. And I think the way that you did it is very inspiring. And, we're very proud to feature in this anthology.
Thank you so much.
Any other last minute things you'd like to share about your story, about anything you want to plug?
I guess I already mentioned Ferio Wind's art was amazing. I guess I'm gonna plug my web novels then, because that's the current projects I have going on right now that I can share. Everything else is just assistant work, and those books aren't going to come out for a few months. So I have several books on Tapas right now. Book of Coal is my main series on there. It's a mystery series about a shape-shifting detective who's prone to body horror. They're asexual and gender fluid. Then I have Slayer of Yggdrasil, which is about an agender bartender who is whisked to a fantasy world and has to go on a quest to kill an evil tree. And then Outside Cats is my science fiction story that's going to be posting regularly starting next month. I accidentally released a chapter early and decided to just release the second chapter early this month, and then set everything up to go on July. So that one is about alien brainworms infecting cats to take over the world.
I love that.
So they're kind of all over the place.
It's very up his alley, you said.
Very up my alley. I love a cat story, so I have to check that out.
But
I know what you're going to be doing tonight, Phil. You're going to be binge reading.
Those can be seen on Tapas. I can also be found on Blue Sky as Neela K20.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So the last guests are me and Phil. We're going to be talking about our stories really quickly. So I did a story of I am Aloe, and what we ended up doing was both of these stories. We asked Jeremy, like, is it okay? Are these good? Because what I really wanted to see, and I was actually really surprised we didn't see, was a story about a celebrity, about Hollywood. Because I feel like Hollywood is very salacious, and I feel like there's I can't think of anybody that is an asexual or aromantic celebrity, like someone to like look up to. So I thought it was a really interesting story about talking about being in the closet in Hollywood and what that means. And so yeah, no, I had the passion to write that, and I had Jeremy look over the script, and then also Perry, who is on the ace spectrum as well, do the art for that one. And I'm proud of it. But for a story about, I think, at least, your sexuality and thinking you have to hide it. I think any queer person could feel that. And also just like experiences that I've seen from the outside looking in about the industry. And obviously comics is a very kind of connected Venn diagram to Hollywood. And I have a lot of background in TV stuff. So I just thought it was a really fun story to write.
For sure. It's very up Kat's alley. Kat loves a good like Hollywood story. And as she said, it was something she was very much excited to read going in. And I don't think we got any submissions that tackled that. So, I'm very glad that you picked up the pen and you put that in. Do you want to talk about, any real world influences that you might have had on this script? Like do you have any, obviously this is a amalgamation and fiction, but like, did you have any real world experiences like publicized that you were drawing upon or face or name claims that you were going for?
Yeah. I will say that experience of journalism was very much put in there, like the whole press line. I really wanted to showcase the chaos of a press line. So I did that. And then the intimate coordination there. I've been on sets before. I've done stuff with that. So just kind of taking from experience from those things. And that was really important to me to like see that visually. So
I remember one note in the script that you had was on the first page, you see kind of the juxtaposition between like the sex scene in the movie and then like the scenes with the intimacy coordinator coordinating it, and it's very like demystifying a sex scene and like taking the sexy out of a sex scene. And then obviously as the story goes on, you meet our asexual lead. So I thought that was a really strong opener.
And I think that's anything with TV. I did stuff for The Tick when that was on, and I saw that a lot. I saw that like something that I thought was going to be a huge action scene, like how kind of robotic it is to kind of get that right and how many hours it goes into it. And just like, it honestly does become very robotic in some ways. So just like in anything in that like process, it could become very mechanic. Yeah. So I just wanted to showcase that. But that's my story. So, Phil, do you want to talk about slice life? And I'll add that we do these stories all the time for all anthologies, because if marketing wise is really a reason why we do it, is because we want our slice life readers to read the book, but also we so happen to have a lot of characters on different spectrums that we feel like fit an anthology.
Yeah, absolutely. So, both of these stories, Showmance for that Kat wrote and the Slice of Life story that we both wrote and I lead wrote, were stories that were added in after the fact, after we curated the anthology. We definitely, as Kat said, marketing wise, we've seen the value of having, a story based on our existing properties or a story in our own voice when we're trying to sell to our audience. But we're always very conscious we don't want to take any slots away. So we always fully curate an anthology before we even decide what/if we're going to contribute.
Yeah, both these
So,
stories that happened here.
Like we said with Kat's story, that was very much a story she wanted to see in the anthology, and that's why we were like, all right, like it's our anthology that we're putting together and we're funding. Like, let's put in the extra money to put that in. And then, as far as Slice of Life goes, Slice of Life, for those who don't know, is our webcomic. It's a GL, a girl love romance, about an anime character who comes to life and falls in love with a cheerleader. It's our most popular series. It's been running for about 3 years now. And as Kat mentioned, we have a lot of diverse characters across the LGBT spectrum in the book, including a handful of A-spec characters that we thought would be really fun to highlight. So Slice of Life spoilers, if anyone watching this is a reader who's not up to date on our 6th issue on the, like chapter 40, so 3 seconds. But most recently in the series, which follows again, Lady Vengeance, anime character who comes to life. Most recently, her dead boyfriend from the anime also came to life. And, versus her, she was the lead of her anime. He was like a side character who literally existed to be killed off to motivate her. So he really is kind of a blank slate. And it was something we really want to explore, this idea that he comes to life after Yuriko, our lead, has spent so much time learning how to be a real person, learning to evolve past the anime lead tropes that she started as. And then now we get this actual blank slate who comes in and the only thing he knows is that he loved Yuriko or was written to have loved Yuriko. So this story follows Kojima, that anime character, her Yuriko's ex-boyfriend, as he just has recently started going to school, like Yuriko has been going to school, and finds himself on a maybe date with another character from our book, Melody. Melody is a friend of Lucy, the cheerleading lead character, and has been showing up in the book since probably our 1st or 2nd issue as a tertiary character. And very early on, we knew that she was ace. We revealed that she was asexual to our readers, but it was something we hadn't really gotten the chance to explore outside of just a few one-off moments where you could see her reaction when the very allonormative world that they live in would present itself around her. So this seemed like a really great opportunity to explore both Melody's asexuality and then Kojima's demisexuality, which he is demisexual, but he doesn't have the words. He doesn't have the words for much since he's a very newly alive person. So we really want to explore the idea of let's pair up these two characters who, are kind of figuring out where they lie on the A-spec together and have to kind of deal with a normal hangout between two friends being turned into a date, having all of this romanticism projected onto it by peers just because they happen to be of the opposite gender, or just because they happen to be teenagers hanging out together alone. So yeah, that felt like a really long preamble, but it was a fun opportunity to explore secondary characters in Slice of Life and put them in a situation we probably wouldn't have gotten to see them in the actual book.
Yeah, so those are our stories. That's a good handful of the stories too. This is one of the more fun aspects of doing an anthology, is being able to do these shows, getting to meet people face to face or hear their voices, because it's just so fun to do that. I saw someone mention, I think Day said, I feel like there are a lot fewer anthology submission calls these days, so it's great that Lifeline's thriving in that space. And yeah, we want to keep creating these things, and we have another anthology coming out for witches that we've been hearing you guys. The answers will be coming out tomorrow. But yeah, no, it's really fun. But Jeremy, any other last thoughts you want to add? Obviously, any plugs you'd like to have?
Yeah, I mean, it's really lovely having this live stream and this chance to generally both here and as part of the anthology, get to introduce creators too, people that you might not have seen, some of whom like Laura we talked to has never done anything in the comic space before, and really like have this place where we get the kind of stories that we don't always see, and that I think in particular is big for ace stuff, asexual and aromantic stuff. And I can't say enough, like, to people who are following the Kickstarter, we're still going. We're working right now to try and reach our 50,000 stretch goal, which is huge because our original goal was 30,000, and we sort of blew past that in the first week. And it's really incredible to see this kind of support for ace stories and for ace people who often don't get attention, or when they're talked about or talked as being this one particular sort of thing. And even very recently, a particular author of books about boy sorcerers really just felt the need to just go to town and talk about how much people hated those ace people, despite the fact that, not to stereotype ace people in this way, but we don't mess with people. We don't. We're not out there screwing around with y'all. Like, why be mean? I don't understand it. But yeah, it's been great to see this big pop that this book has gotten, because even in queer spaces and in pride spaces, that A gets left off of the letters quite a bit, and it's important to see it get this kind of attention and this kind of support from a larger queer community and people who are really interested and excited in seeing our stories.
Yeah, visibility is super important, and we want to see more of it. So Jeremy, where can everyone find you on the social medias?
I am on mostly on Blue Sky and occasionally on Tumblr as Jeremy Whitley. My website is jeremywhitley.com if you want to see all the various books I've done. I also have my podcast, Progressively Horrified, which Emily is my co-host on, along with our friend Ben, which is all about scary movies and progressive politics and the places where they intersect. So we watch a scary movie every week and talk about the ways in which it is and isn't progressive, which is fun for people who do and don't like to deal with both of those things, and the way they intersect. And of course, obviously, you can find me on here, and I will be. I'm doing Heroes and, like I said, ALA and FlameCon and several other places, along with my. ALA is a big deal for me because the Navigating with You, my queer romance about two girls who fall in love over their shared love of obscure manga, is getting a Stonewall honor there. So
that's amazing. Cool. Congratulations. That's huge. Very exciting.
Thank you.
All right, Phil, what do you got coming up? Obviously pretty much the same thing as I do, but plug the different social media that you have that I don't.
Well, I actually have all these projects Kat doesn't know about.
These secret projects.
Secret projects I found time to work on. Obviously, Aces and Arrows, it's live for the next 2 weeks. Please support. We're super proud of it. Kat and I pretty much have at least one project live every month, so keep an eye open. Our next one, which I don't even know if we publicly announced, but we're going to be launching a 3rd issue of our Sleeping Beauty, Alice in Wonderland, sapphic mature crossover romance book.
Which is
We're
really different than this book.
It's incredibly different. It's a not safe for work book. But I think anyone could enjoy it, and it's super cool. This issue, really excited. We're going to be introducing
the Queen of Hearts. You might enjoy
exactly.
this one.
The Queen of Hearts, her domain in this book is a casino, and you have to kind of win your way out and bet time left in your life. So it's really cool. It's our favorite issue so far. We're really excited about that. Subscribe to the Lifeline Comics Substack for updates on future projects, including future anthology submissions. Learn about all the events we're going to be at, including a ton of prides this month.
We did a breakdown
check out
post today. We did a breakdown post today about this current project, so the Substack's great for stuff like that.
Yeah, We do write-ups every 2 weeks on varying topics, and including like dissections of our existing projects, teases for future projects, general how-tos, based on our experience. So it's a great resource. LifelineComics.com, you can find all of our comics. You can buy them on there. And social media, I'm at Phil Falco Writes on Blue Sky, Instagram, the one that shall not be named. So definitely check it out. And Kat, you can plug all your secret projects now.
So I have this really cool monster project.
You didn't invite me?
And I didn't invite Phil. Jeremy's on it, but Phil wasn't invited. But yeah, no, me and Phil have been doing lots of stuff with Lifeline. Again, I really want to highlight that Substack. My dog wants to highlight that Substack. It's a great opportunity. She was so quiet for 2 hours, Lenny.
She heard us talk about her favorite newsletter.
That's true. I really should have known that. But yeah, go check out at Comic Uno. That's mostly where you can find me. And check out this YouTube channel. I do a lot of stuff on here, I especially comic related stuff. So go check that all out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and we'll see you guys in the next one.